The rain came down like it had something to prove. I remember standing outside that restaurant, mascara running down my cheeks, my silk blouse clinging to my skin like a second layer of shame. The valet was staring at me. I could feel his eyes, curious, pitying, maybe even amused. I didn't care. I couldn't care anymore. My phone screen glowed in my trembling hand. Your Uber is arriving. Black Toyota Camry. I looked up and saw it, a dark car pulling to the curb, headlights cutting through the downpour. I didn't wait. I didn't check the license plate. I didn't confirm the driver's name. I just opened the back door and threw myself inside like I was escaping a burning building. And maybe I was. Just drive, I whispered, my voice cracking. Please just get me out of here. The car pulled away from the curb without a word. I leaned my head against the cold window and let the tears fall freely. 18 years. 18 years of swallowing my words, shrinking my dreams, and folding myself into shapes that made everyone comfortable except me. 18 years of being Victor Ellison's wife, his accessory, his audience, his punching bag wrapped in designer clothes. The rain streaked down the glass, like the city itself was crying with me. I didn't know then that I had just made the biggest mistake of my life, and I didn't know that mistake would save me. My name is Marlene Ellison, or at least that's the name I've answered to for almost 2 decades. But sitting in that car that night, soaking wet and broken open, I didn't feel like anyone's wife. I didn't feel like anyone at all. Let me take you back. Let me tell you how I got to that curb, that car, that moment where everything changed. I met Victor when I was 23 years old, fresh out of college, bright-eyed, full of ridiculous hope. I had just started working at a marketing firm downtown, entry-level, barely enough to cover rent and ramen, but I was proud. I was building something. Victor was a client. He owned a chain of luxury car dealerships across 3 states, and he walked into our office like he owned the building too. Tall, broad-shouldered, salt and pepper hair, even then, distinguished, my mother would have said. He had this way of looking at you that made you feel like the only person in the room. I know now that was a technique, a tool, but back then it felt like magic. He asked for me specifically on his account, said I had something special. My boss was thrilled. My coworkers were jealous, and I, naive, hungry for validation me, I was flattered. The dinners started slowly. Business meetings that turned into drinks that turned into late nights in his penthouse apartment. He told me I was different, told me I understood him like no one else, told me his first marriage had been a mistake, a youthful error with a woman who couldn't handle his ambition. He never mentioned her name, not once. Within 6 months, I had a ring on my finger. Within a year, I had his last name and a new life in his sprawling estate outside the city. I quit my job. He said it made more sense, said he could take care of me, said I deserved to rest. What he meant was, I want you where I can see you. But I didn't understand that yet. I was too busy playing house, too busy being grateful that someone like him had chosen someone like me. The early years weren't all darkness. I need you to understand that because people always ask, why did you stay? And they expect a simple answer. But there is nothing simple about love twisted into control. Victor could be charming, generous. He surprised me with weekend trips to Paris. He held me when I cried about my father's death. He laughed at my jokes and told me I was brilliant, beautiful, everything he'd ever wanted. And then, slowly, the light began to dim. It started with small comments. Are you really wearing that? Maybe you shouldn't eat so much at dinner, sweetheart. Your sister's great, but she's a bit much, isn't she? Maybe we don't need to see her so often. I made excuses. He's stressed. He's tired. He doesn't mean it like that. Then came the rules. No going out without telling him where. No friendships he hadn't approved. No spending that wasn't cleared through him first. He monitored my phone, my emails, my calendar. He said it was because he loved me, because he worried, because the world was dangerous and he just wanted to protect me. Protection, that's what he called it. I called it a cage, but only in my own mind, never out loud, never where he could hear. We had 2 children, my son Derek and my daughter Naomi. I poured everything I had into them. Every ounce of love I couldn't give myself, I gave to those kids. They became my reason, my purpose, my only source of joy in a house that felt more like a museum than a home. Victor was a good father on paper. He provided. He showed up to recitals and games, but he was distant with them, too affectionate only when it served his image, critical when they fell short of his impossible standards. Derek is 20 now, away at college, trying to figure out who he is apart from his father's shadow. Naomi is 17, sharp-tongued and suspicious. She sees more than she lets on. She looks at me sometimes with this expression that breaks my heart. Like she's waiting for me to do something. Anything. Like she's waiting for me to wake up. The night everything changed started like so many others. Victor had a business dinner. Important clients, he said. I needed to look the part, he said. So I put on the dress he picked out, a cream-colored sheath that cost more than my first car, and I sat in the salon chair for 2 hours while someone curled my hair into perfect waves. I looked at myself in the mirror before we left. I barely recognized the woman staring back at me. The restaurant was upscale, one of those places where the menu doesn't have prices because if you have to ask, you can't afford it. Victor's clients were a husband-wife duo in commercial real estate, loud, flashy, dripping with new money. The wife talked about her third vacation home. The husband made jokes that made me uncomfortable and then looked at me like I was supposed to laugh. I smiled, I nodded, I played my role. Then Victor made a comment. Small, almost casual. We were discussing some charity gala, and the wife mentioned she admired a woman who chaired the event, a CEO, self-made, powerful. Marlene here isn't really the career type, Victor said, cutting into his steak. She tried that once, didn't quite stick. Everyone laughed. I felt something crack inside me. It was such a small thing. He'd said worse, done worse. But something about that moment, the way he dismissed everything I'd been before him, the way he made my entire existence a punchline, something snapped. I excused myself to the bathroom. I stood in front of the mirror, gripping the sink, breathing through the rage that was rising in my chest like floodwater. This is your life, I thought. This is it. This is all there is. I walked back to the table. I picked up my clutch, and I said very calmly, I'm not feeling well. I'm going to get some air. Victor's eyes narrowed. We're in the middle of dinner, Marlene. I know, I said. I'll be outside. I walked out before he could stop me, before I could change my mind, before the old Marlene, the obedient one, the quiet one, could pull me back. And that's when I saw the car. The rain was relentless. I fumbled with my phone, opened the app, saw the notification, your driver is arriving, and when a black car slid to the curb, I didn't hesitate. I climbed in, slammed the door shut, and said those words that would change everything. Just drive, please, just get me out of here. The car moved, smooth, quiet, like gliding through water. I didn't look at the driver. I couldn't look at anything. I just sat there, trembling, watching the city blur past the rain-streaked window. And then, without meaning to, I started talking. I'm sorry, I whispered. I'm so sorry. I couldn't stay in there. I couldn't breathe. Silence from the front seat, but the car kept moving. Do you ever feel like you've wasted your whole life? I said, almost to myself. Like you woke up one day and realized you don't know who you are anymore, that everything you thought you were building was actually a prison. Still silence, but somehow it didn't feel empty. It felt like the kind of silence that was listening. And so I kept talking. I don't know why I kept talking. Maybe it was the darkness of the car, the anonymity of it all. Maybe it was the rain creating a cocoon around us, sealing me off from the world I'd just fled. Or maybe I had simply reached the end of my capacity for silence. 18 years of swallowed words. 18 years of smiling when I wanted to scream. 18 years of yes, Victor, and of course. Victor, and whatever you think is best, Victor. That night, in the back of that car, the dam broke. My husband, I said, my voice hollow, he's not a bad man. At least that's what I've told myself for years. He provides, he's respected. Everyone thinks he's wonderful, charming Victor. Successful Victor, generous Victor. I laughed bitterly. and the sound surprised me. But you want to know the truth nobody sees. I didn't wait for an answer. I didn't need one. He controls everything. Everything. What I wear, who I see, what I eat, how I speak. He monitors my phone. He checks the mileage on my car. If I'm 10 minutes late coming home from the grocery store, he wants to know why. Who did I talk to? What took so long? Am I lying to him? My voice cracked. I pressed my palm against my chest like I could physically hold myself together. I haven't had a real friend in 15 years. My sister barely knows me anymore. My own children look at me like I'm a ghost, like I'm already gone, even though I'm standing right in front of them. The car turned smoothly onto a quieter street. The rain had softened to a steady murmur, tapping gently against the roof. The worst part, I continued, the worst part is that I let it happen. I watched myself disappear piece by piece, and I did nothing. I told myself it was love. I told myself I was lucky. I told myself that this is just what marriage is: compromise, sacrifice, putting someone else first. I shook my head slowly. But it's not compromise when you're the only one giving. It's not sacrifice when he takes everything and offers nothing back. It's not love when you're afraid to speak your own thoughts in your own home. The driver still hadn't spoken, not a single word, but I could feel something, a presence, an attention, like the silence itself was holding space for everything I was releasing. Most people would have interrupted by now, asked if I was okay, made some awkward comment about how things would get better, but this driver just listened. And so I went deeper. "Can I tell you something I've never told anyone?" I whispered. The words hung in the air, heavy, dangerous. 15 years ago, I did something I've carried with me every single day since. I closed my eyes. The memory rose up like smoke, unwanted, unstoppable. There was a man. His name was Daniel. He worked at the community center where I used to volunteer back when Victor still let me do things like that. He ran art classes for kids, gentle, kind. He looked at me like I was a person, not a possession. My throat tightened. We talked at first, just small things: the weather, the kids, books we were reading. But then the conversations got longer, deeper. He asked me questions no one had asked in years. What did I dream about? What made me happy? What did I want from life? I pressed my fingers against my eyelids, trying to stop the tears. I didn't even know how to answer. I had forgotten that I was allowed to want things. The car slowed at a red light. Rain continued its gentle percussion on the windows. One night, after a particularly bad fight with Victor, he had screamed at me for burning dinner, called me useless, told me I was nothing without him. I drove to Daniel's apartment. I didn't plan it. I didn't think. I just went. My voice dropped to barely a whisper. I stayed for 3 hours, and for those 3 hours I remembered what it felt like to be seen, to be touched with tenderness instead of ownership, to be wanted, not controlled. Silence. I never saw him again after that night. I ended it before it could become anything more. I told myself I was doing the right thing, protecting my marriage, protecting my children. But the guilt, God, the guilt has never left me. I opened my eyes, staring at the rain-blurred lights outside. I've carried that secret for 15 years. I've let it poison me from the inside. And the worst part? Victor doesn't even know. He has no idea. He walks around like he's the victim, like I'm the one who's lucky to have him, and all this time. I couldn't finish the sentence. All this time, I've been punishing myself for 3 hours of feeling human. The car made another turn, and I realized I had no idea where we were. The streets looked unfamiliar, residential, tree-lined, quiet, not the route to my house at all. A small flutter of panic rose in my chest. "Excuse me," I said, leaning forward slightly. "Where are we going? This isn't the way to." "I know," the driver said. It was the first time she'd spoken. Her voice was calm, measured, with a warmth that caught me off guard. "I'm sorry," she continued, "but I'm not your Uber driver." The panic sharpened. My hand instinctively moved toward the door handle. What do you mean?" I requested. "You got into the wrong car, sweetheart." The car slowed and pulled to the side of the street, stopping beneath the amber glow of a street lamp. The rain had softened to a fine mist now, and in the sudden stillness, I could hear my own heartbeat pounding. The driver turned around. She was a woman, maybe mid-50s, with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a simple bun. Her face was kind but weathered, the kind of face that had seen things, survived things. Her eyes were dark and steady, and they held mine with an intensity that made it impossible to look away. "My name is Joan," she said, "and I think it's time we talked." I should have run. I should have thrown open the door and sprinted into the rain, screaming for help. That's what any sensible person would have done. But something in her eyes stopped me, something familiar, something that looked almost like recognition. "Who are you?" I breathed. "How do you know?" "I know Victor," she said simply. "I know him better than anyone." My blood ran cold. I was married to him for 7 years. The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt the air leave my lungs, felt the world tilt slightly on its axis. "That's impossible," I whispered. "Victor was only married once before. He said it was a mistake. He said she was unstable," Joan finished, a sad smile crossing her lips. "Crazy, couldn't handle his lifestyle. Let me guess, he told you she was jealous, paranoid, impossible to please. He told you the marriage fell apart because of her, not him. He told you he tried everything, but she was simply too broken to love." Every word was a knife. Because yes, that was exactly what Victor had told me, word for word. "How do you know that?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Because he said the same things about me to the woman before you," Joan replied. "And I'm sure he'll say them about you to the woman who comes after." The silence that followed was deafening. I sat there, frozen, trying to process what she was telling me. My mind raced through every conversation, every story Victor had shared about his first marriage. The vague references to a woman who couldn't appreciate what she had. The dismissive comments about how she fell apart and how he'd been relieved when it ended. He never mentioned her name, not once in 18 years. And now she was sitting in front of me, flesh and blood, with eyes that held decades of pain I recognized all too well. "I don't understand," I finally managed. "How did you find me? Why tonight? Why?" "I've been watching Victor for years," Joan said quietly. "Not stalking, just keeping track, making sure he hasn't changed, making sure he's still the man I remember." She paused, her jaw tightening. "And he hasn't. He's exactly the same, maybe worse, because now he's had more practice." "But why tonight?" I pressed. "Why did you?" "I didn't plan this," she admitted. "I was parked outside that restaurant watching. I do that sometimes, sit and observe, remind myself that I'm not crazy, that everything I remember actually happened. And then I saw you." Her eyes softened. "I saw you walk out of that restaurant like a woman who had just decided to stop drowning. I saw the look on your face, the rage, the grief, the exhaustion. I recognized it because I've felt it. I've lived it." She reached back and gently touched my hand. Her fingers were warm, steady. "When you got in my car, I knew it was a mistake. I knew I should correct you, tell you I wasn't your driver. But then you started talking, and I realized this was the moment I'd been waiting for, the moment when someone else finally saw the truth." I sat in that car for what felt like hours. Maybe it was. Time had lost all meaning. Joan told me her story, all of it, and with every word, I felt the ground shift beneath everything I thought I knew. She had met Victor in her late 20s. She was a nurse, driven and compassionate. He was a rising businessman with a silver tongue and an overwhelming charm. He swept her off her feet with grand gestures, flowers at her workplace. Surprise trips, love letters that made her feel like the center of the universe. "He made me feel chosen," Joan said, her voice heavy with old sorrow. "Special, like no one had ever understood me the way he did." The courtship was fast. The wedding was elegant. And for the first 2 years, Joan believed she had found her soulmate. Then the mask began to slip. "It started with little things," she continued. "Comments about my weight, questions about where I'd been, who I'd talked to. He didn't like my friends, said they were bad influences. He didn't like my family, said they were too involved in our marriage. She shook her head slowly. Piece by piece, he isolated me, and I let him because I loved him, because I believed him when he said it was for my own good. Joan's hands rested on the steering wheel, but she wasn't looking at the road anymore. She was looking somewhere far away, into a past that still haunted her. The isolation was gradual, she said. So gradual that I didn't notice it happening until it was already done. My friends stopped calling because I never called back. My sister gave up trying to make plans because I always had an excuse. My parents thought I was just busy with my new life, my new marriage. She let out a breath that carried years of weight. But the truth was, Victor had built a wall around me, brick by brick, and I had helped him do it. I sat motionless in the backseat, my damp clothes forgotten, my tears dried on my cheeks. Every word Joan spoke felt like she was reaching into my chest and pulling out pieces of my own story. He monitored everything, she continued. My phone, my schedule, my spending. If I bought something he hadn't approved, there would be consequences. Not physical, Victor was too smart for that, too careful. He never left marks you could see. Her voice hardened. But the other kind of marks, the ones that live inside you, those he left everywhere. I thought about the nights I had lain awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling like a hollow shell. The mornings I had looked in the mirror and not recognized the woman staring back. The countless moments I had questioned my own sanity because Victor told me I was remembering things wrong, feeling things I shouldn't feel, reacting in ways that were irrational and emotional. Gaslighting, that's what they call it now. But back then, I didn't have a word for it. I just thought I was losing my mind. How did you get out? I whispered. Joan was quiet for a long moment. The rain had stopped completely now, and the silence outside the car felt almost sacred. I almost didn't, she finally said. There was a night, Joan began, her voice dropping lower, about 5 years into our marriage. Victor had been particularly cruel that week. Nothing I did was right. The house wasn't clean enough. The dinner wasn't good enough. I wasn't attentive enough, affectionate enough, grateful enough. She paused, and I saw her grip tighten on the steering wheel. He told me I was worthless, that no one else would ever want me, that I should be on my knees thanking God that he put up with me when any other man would have left long ago. I felt my stomach turn. I had heard those words, maybe not exactly the same, but close enough to know the way they burrowed into your brain and made a home there. That night, I stood in our bathroom with a bottle of sleeping pills in my hand. The air in the car seemed to freeze. I counted them, 32 pills. I thought about how easy it would be, how quiet, how final. I thought about how Victor would probably remarry within a year and tell everyone I was troubled and fragile and that he had tried so hard to save me. Tears slipped down my cheeks. I didn't wipe them away. But then I thought about my mother, Joan continued. I thought about her face when she would get the news. I thought about my sister having to plan my funeral. And I thought about Victor standing there, accepting condolences, playing the grieving widower. Her jaw clenched. And something inside me refused to let him win, refused to let my death be another chapter in his story of victimhood. She turned to face me fully now, her dark eyes blazing with a fire that hadn't dimmed in decades. I put the pills down. I walked out of that bathroom, and I started planning my escape. The escape, Joan explained, wasn't dramatic. There was no explosive confrontation, no public revelation. Victor was too powerful, too connected, too skilled at manipulation for any of that to work. I spent 8 months preparing, she said. 8 months of pretending everything was fine while I secretly copied documents, recorded conversations, and stashed money in an account he didn't know about. She had found a lawyer, a woman who specialized in high-conflict divorces. She had rented a small apartment on the other side of the city. She had packed a single suitcase and hidden it at her sister's house. And then, one morning, I waited until Victor left for work. I called my lawyer. I called the locksmith. And by the time he came home that evening, I was gone. What did he do? I asked, though part of me already knew. What he always does, Joan replied bitterly. He tried to destroy me. The divorce was brutal. Victor contested everything, the settlement, the assets, even Joan's mental stability. He hired a team of expensive lawyers who painted her as an unstable, vindictive woman trying to extort her successful husband. He told everyone I was crazy, Joan said. Paranoid, delusional. He said I had made up stories about abuse because I was jealous of his success. Some people believed him. Hell, most people believed him. Victor is very, very good at what he does. But Joan had evidence. The documents she'd copied. The recordings she'd made. The financial records showing how he had controlled every aspect of her life. It wasn't enough to destroy him, she admitted. But it was enough to get out, to get a settlement, to disappear before he could completely annihilate what was left of me. She had moved across the country, started over, built a new life piece by piece, a small house, a quiet job at a library, a few close friends who knew her story and loved her anyway. But I never forgot him, she said. I never stopped watching. Why? I asked. Joan's eyes met mine, and in them I saw something that chilled me to my core. Because I knew there would be others. Victor doesn't change. He just finds new victims. And I needed to know, to bear witness, to be ready if one of them ever needed me. She paused. I've been waiting for you, Marlene. I just didn't know it until tonight. I sat with her words, letting them sink into places I had kept locked for so long. How did you know my name? I finally asked. I've done my research, Joan said. Over the years, I've kept track of Victor's life, his business, his social circle, his family. She looked at me with something like tenderness. I know about your children, Derek and Naomi. I know you gave up your career for him. I know you volunteer at the children's hospital twice a month, the only thing he lets you do outside the house without supervision. I felt exposed, vulnerable, but also strangely seen. I'm not stalking you, she added quickly. I want you to understand that. I'm not obsessed with Victor. I've built a good life, I have peace, but I also have responsibility. Responsibility. To make sure no one else ends up where I almost did. Standing in a bathroom with a bottle of pills, believing that death is the only escape. The car was completely silent now except for our breathing. The street lamp above cast a soft orange glow through the windows, making the space feel almost intimate, like a confessional. Why are you telling me all this? I asked. What do you want from me? Joan considered the question carefully before answering. I don't want anything from you, Marlene, but I want something for you. She reached into the console beside her and pulled out a small business card. She handed it to me. It was simple white cardstock with a name, phone number, and email address. The name read, Dr. Patricia Holloway, family attorney. Patricia helped me escape, Joan said. She's discreet, she's experienced, and she understands men like Victor. I stared at the card in my hands. I'm not asking you to do anything tonight, Joan continued. I'm not asking you to leave him tomorrow. That's not how this works. I know better than anyone that you have to be ready. You have to choose it for yourself. She placed her hand gently over mine. But I want you to know that when you are ready, and I believe you will be, you're not alone. You don't have to figure this out by yourself. There are people who understand, people who will believe you. I don't know how long we sat there. Time had become meaningless. The world outside the car could have been spinning or standing still. I wouldn't have noticed either way. Finally, I asked the question that had been burning in my chest since she first spoke. The things I confessed earlier, I said, my voice barely audible. About Daniel, about the affair, does that change things? Does that make me? I couldn't finish the sentence. Joan shook her head firmly. You made a human choice in an inhuman situation, she said. You reached for someone who made you feel alive when everything else was killing you. That doesn't make you a bad person. That makes you a survivor. She squeezed my hand. Victor would want you to carry that guilt forever. He would want you to believe that one moment of weakness defines your entire worth. But that's his voice in your head, Marlene, not the truth. Tears streamed down my face again, but this time they felt different. Cleaner. like something toxic was finally being washed away. You deserve compassion, Joan continued. From others, yes, but especially from yourself. You've been through a war, and the fact that you're still here, still breathing, still feeling, that's not weakness. That's extraordinary strength. She drove me home that night. Not to the front gate. That would have been too risky, but to a street corner 3 blocks away where I could walk the rest of the distance. Before I stepped out of the car, I turned to look at her one last time. Why did you really stop for me tonight, Joan? You could have just driven past. You didn't have to get involved. She smiled, a sad knowing smile. Because 23 years ago, I was standing in that same rain, outside a different restaurant, feeling the same desperation. And I wished, God, how I wished that someone would have stopped for me. Someone who understood. Someone who could have told me that I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't alone, that there was a way out. She reached over and gently touched my cheek. No one came for me, Marlene, so I decided to become that person for someone else. That's all. That's the whole reason. I stepped out of the car, clutching the business card in my hand like a lifeline. Thank you, I whispered. Don't thank me yet, Joan replied. Thank me when you're free. She pulled away slowly, her taillights disappearing into the mist. And I stood there, alone in the quiet night, feeling something I hadn't felt in 18 years. Hope. I walked home slowly that night, my heels clicking against the wet pavement, the business card tucked safely inside my clutch. The rain had stopped completely, leaving the air fresh and clean, washed new, like the world itself had been given a second chance. If only it were that simple for people. The house was dark when I arrived. Victor's car wasn't in the driveway, which meant he was either still at the restaurant smoothing things over with his clients, or he had gone somewhere else to stew in his anger. Either way, I was grateful for the silence. I slipped inside through the side door, moving quietly through the kitchen. The house felt different somehow, or maybe I was the one who was different. The marble countertops, the crystal chandelier, the fresh flowers that the housekeeper arranged every Monday, it all looked the same as it always had. But I saw it now with new eyes. This wasn't a home. It was a museum. A carefully curated display of wealth and success, designed to impress visitors and intimidate inhabitants. I had spent 18 years being one of the exhibits. I climbed the stairs to our bedroom, his bedroom, really. I had stopped thinking of it as mine years ago and changed out of my damp clothes. I stood in the closet, surrounded by designer dresses and expensive shoes, and I felt nothing. No comfort, no pride, just emptiness. Everything here had been chosen by him, approved by him, permitted by him. I pulled on a simple cotton nightgown, one of the few things I had bought myself, years ago, before he started monitoring every purchase, and I sat on the edge of the bed with Joan's business card in my hands. Dr. Patricia Holloway, family attorney. Such a simple thing, a name, a number, a possibility. But holding it felt like holding a grenade. One phone call could change everything. One conversation could set in motion a series of events that I couldn't control, couldn't predict, couldn't take back. Was I ready for that? I thought about Derek, away at college, finally free from Victor's constant scrutiny. I thought about Naomi, still trapped in this house, watching me with those sharp, knowing eyes. I thought about all the years I had stayed for the children, telling myself that a broken home would damage them more than a broken mother. But what had my staying actually taught them? Derek had learned that women should be silent, that men control and women comply, that love looks like monitoring and criticism and conditional approval. Naomi had learned that strong women eventually break, that marriage means sacrifice without reciprocity, that her mother, the woman who should have modeled courage and self-worth, had chosen comfort over freedom. What legacy was I leaving them? I looked at the card again. Then I tucked it into the bottom of my jewelry box, beneath the pearls Victor had given me for our 10th anniversary. Not yet, but soon. Victor came home around midnight. I heard his footsteps on the stairs, heavy, deliberate. I knew that walk. It was the walk of a man preparing to deliver a lecture. I was lying in bed, pretending to be asleep. It was a technique I had perfected over the years, controlling my breathing, keeping my body still, willing my face into a mask of peaceful slumber. He stood in the doorway for a long moment. I could feel his eyes on me, assessing, calculating. Then he spoke. "I know you're awake, Marlene." I didn't respond. Maybe if I stayed silent long enough, he would give up and go away. "We need to talk about tonight." His voice was calm, controlled. That was always more dangerous than when he yelled. I opened my eyes slowly, as if I had just woken up. "Victor, I didn't hear you come in." "Don't." He moved into the room, loosening his tie. "Don't play games with me. You embarrassed me tonight, in front of important clients. Do you have any idea how that made me look?" I sat up, pulling the blanket around my shoulders like armor. "I wasn't feeling well. I told you that." "You told me nothing." He threw his tie onto the dresser with more force than necessary. "You walked out in the middle of dinner without explanation. You left me to make excuses, to apologize, to try to salvage a deal that you nearly destroyed with your little tantrum." Tantrum. That's what he called it when I expressed any emotion that inconvenienced him. "I'm sorry," I heard myself say. The words came automatically, reflexively, 18 years of conditioning. But this time, they tasted different in my mouth. Bitter, wrong. "Sorry isn't good enough." He sat on the edge of the bed, his back to me. "I've given you everything, Marlene, this house, this life, our children's education. And this is how you repay me, by humiliating me in public." I thought about Joan's words. He'll try to make you feel like you owe him. Like everything he's given you comes with strings attached. But gifts aren't weapons, Marlene. A real partner doesn't keep score. "I said I wasn't feeling well," I repeated, my voice steadier now. "I needed air, that's all." Victor turned to look at me. His eyes were cold, calculating. "Where did you go?" "I took an Uber home." "The app says your ride was canceled." My heart stopped. "What?" "I checked the app, Marlene, on our shared account. Your ride was requested and then canceled. So where were you for the hour between when you left the restaurant and when you arrived home?" I felt the walls closing in, the familiar panic rising in my chest. He had checked. Of course he had checked. He always checked. "The first driver canceled," I said, forcing my voice to remain calm. "I requested another one." "And that took an hour." There was a delay, the rain, traffic. He studied my face for a long moment, searching for cracks in my story. I held his gaze, refusing to look away. If I looked away, he would know. He would see. "You're lying to me," he finally said. "I'm not." "Then let me see your phone." "Victor." "Now." I hesitated. My phone was on the nightstand within his reach. There was nothing incriminating on it. I hadn't been foolish enough to save Joan's number or text anyone about what had happened. But the act of surrendering it, of submitting to his demand, felt like a defeat. I handed it to him anyway. He scrolled through my messages, my call history, my apps. His face remained expressionless. After several minutes, he set the phone down on the nightstand. "Fine," he said. "Maybe I was wrong." He stood and walked toward the bathroom. "But Marlene," he added, pausing at the door, "if I find out you're keeping secrets from me, there will be consequences. You know that, don't you?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. He closed the bathroom door behind him. And I sat there in the darkness, my heart pounding, understanding for the first time the full scope of what I was up against. The next few weeks were difficult. Victor watched me more closely than ever. He asked probing questions about my day, my activities, my thoughts. He insisted on accompanying me to my volunteer shifts at the children's hospital. He checked my phone randomly, demanding to see texts and emails without warning. I performed normalcy like my life depended on it, because in many ways, it did. But underneath the performance, something was changing. I couldn't stop thinking about Joan, about her story, about the years she had spent in the same invisible prison that now held me, about the night she had stood in a bathroom with a bottle of pills and the moment she had decided to choose life. I thought about the business card hidden in my jewelry box. I hadn't looked at it since that night, but I knew it was there. A tiny seed of possibility, waiting to grow. And I thought about my children. Derek called once a week, his voice carefully neutral, never mentioning his father unless I asked. I could hear the distance he was putting between himself and this family, this house of mirrors where nothing was as it seemed. Naomi was harder to read. She was 17 now, sharp and watchful, with her father's intelligence and her own fierce will. She had learned to survive in this house by becoming invisible, by retreating into books and music and the privacy of her own thoughts. But lately, I had noticed her watching me, not with the resignation I usually saw in her eyes, but with something else, something like anticipation. One evening, after Victor had gone to his study to take a conference call, Naomi appeared in the kitchen where I was preparing tea. "Mom," she said quietly, leaning against the counter, "can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart." She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "Are you happy?" The question hit me like a physical blow. I set down the kettle, buying myself a moment to compose my response. "What do you mean?" "I mean exactly what I said." Her eyes met mine, unflinching. "Are you happy here with Dad, with all of this?" I opened my mouth to deliver the usual reassurances. "Of course I'm happy. We have a beautiful life. Your father loves us very much." But the words wouldn't come. Naomi watched me struggle, and something in her expression shifted. Understanding, recognition. "I didn't think so," she said softly. That night, after everyone was asleep, I crept to my jewelry box and retrieved Joan's card. I held it in my hands for a long time, feeling its weight so light, yet so heavy with meaning. Then I did something I hadn't done in 18 years. I made a choice for myself. I walked to the guest bathroom on the far side of the house, the one Victor never used, the one without cameras or monitoring. I closed the door, sat on the edge of the bathtub, and dialed the number on the card. It rang 3 times. "Dr. Holloway's office. How may I help you?" I took a deep breath. "My name is Marlene Ellison," I said, my voice trembling but clear. "I need to speak with Dr. Holloway. I think I might need help." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then a warm, professional voice. "Mrs. Ellison, I've been expecting your call. Can you hold for just a moment? Dr. Holloway will want to speak with you personally." I closed my eyes, tears streaming down my face. After 18 years of silence, I had finally found my voice. The conversation with Dr. Patricia Holloway lasted 47 minutes. I know because I watched the clock on the bathroom wall the entire time, terrified that Victor would wake up, would notice my absence, would come looking for answers I wasn't ready to give. But the house remained silent, and in that silence, I poured out 18 years of pain to a stranger who didn't feel like a stranger at all. Patricia's voice was calm and steady, the kind of voice that made you feel safe even when discussing the most dangerous things. She didn't interrupt. She didn't judge. She simply listened, asking occasional clarifying questions, guiding me gently through the maze of my own story. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke. "Marlene, I want you to understand something. What you've described isn't a difficult marriage. It's not a communication problem or a rough patch that counseling can fix. What you've described is a systematic pattern of coercive control." I had heard the term before, vaguely, in articles I had skimmed and documentaries I had watched when Victor wasn't home. But hearing it applied to my own life, to my own marriage, was something different entirely. "I know it might be hard to accept," Patricia continued. "Women in your situation often struggle to name what's happening to them because there are no bruises, no broken bones, nothing visible to point to. But psychological abuse is abuse, Marlene, and it's just as damaging, sometimes more, than physical violence." I pressed my hand against my mouth to stifle a sob. "I'm not ready to leave," I whispered. "I can't just. I have children, I have a life here. He controls everything, the money, the house, everything." "I understand," Patricia said, and I could tell she meant it. "Leaving isn't something that happens overnight. It's a process. And the first step isn't filing for divorce or packing a bag. The first step is exactly what you're doing right now, reaching out, gathering information, beginning to understand your options. She paused. Can I ask you something, Marlene? Yes. Do you have access to any independent financial resources? A bank account in your own name, cash that he doesn't monitor? I thought about the allowance Victor deposited into my personal account each month, an account he could check any time he wanted. I thought about the credit cards that all bore his name, the investments I had signed over to him years ago, the inheritance from my father that had somehow become our money. No, I admitted, nothing he doesn't know about. That's common, Patricia said. Financial control is one of the primary tools abusers use to maintain power. But there are ways to begin building independence, even in your situation. Small steps, careful steps. Would you be willing to work with me on that? Yes, I said, and I meant it. Yes, I would. Over the following weeks, I began my education. Patricia sent me resources, discreetly, through an encrypted email account I created using a library computer during one of my volunteer shifts. Articles about coercive control, guides for safety planning, testimonies from other women who had lived through similar situations and emerged on the other side. I read everything. I absorbed it like a person dying of thirst. The more I learned, the more clearly I understood the architecture of my own prison. Victor hadn't built it with locks and chains. He had built it with love bombing and isolation, with financial dependence and emotional manipulation, with cycles of cruelty and kindness that kept me perpetually off balance, perpetually grateful, perpetually afraid. I learned words for things I had experienced, but never been able to name. Gaslighting, when he told me I was remembering things wrong, that conversations we'd had never happened, that I was too emotional to perceive reality accurately. Isolation, the systematic dismantling of my friendships, my family relationships, my professional network, until he was the only person left in my world. Economic abuse, the control of all financial resources, the requirement that I ask permission for every purchase, the transformation of money into a tool of power rather than a shared resource. Intermittent reinforcement, the unpredictable alternation between cruelty and affection, designed to create a trauma bond that felt like love, but was actually addiction. I had been addicted to my own abuser. The realization was devastating and liberating. Because addiction can be treated, patterns can be broken, and I was finally learning how. Patricia connected me with a financial advisor who specialized in helping women in abusive situations. Her name was Ruth, and she worked pro bono for cases like mine, cases where the resources existed but were hidden, controlled, inaccessible. The first thing we need to establish, Ruth told me during our initial phone call, is what assets exist and where they're located. Do you have any access to financial records, bank statements, tax returns? Victor handles all of that, I said. I sign things sometimes, but I don't really know what I'm signing. That's common, Ruth said, a phrase I was hearing a lot lately. But it also means your signature is on documents you may have legal rights to. We need to start building a picture of the marital assets, carefully, quietly. She gave me instructions. How to photograph documents without leaving a trace, how to access account information without triggering alerts, how to create a hidden file of evidence that could be used when the time came. Don't rush, Ruth cautioned. Don't take risks you're not ready for. The goal right now is information gathering, understanding. When you're ready to act, we'll have everything we need. I followed her instructions meticulously. During Victor's business trips, I photographed bank statements and investment portfolios. I made copies of tax returns and property deeds. I documented the jewelry he had given me, gifts, yes, but also assets that could be liquidated if necessary. Slowly, carefully, I began to see the full picture of our financial life. It was staggering. Victor was worth far more than I had ever understood. Properties in 3 states, investment accounts with 7-figure balances, a retirement fund that could support a small village. And at the center of it all, his dealership empire, the business that had made him wealthy and powerful, the business that he had built during our marriage using money that was, legally, half mine. "You're not powerless, Marlene," Ruth told me when I shared what I had found. "You have rights, significant rights. The question is how to exercise them safely." But safety was becoming increasingly difficult. Victor had always been watchful, but lately his surveillance had intensified. He questioned me about small discrepancies in my schedule. He noted when I spent longer than usual at the library or the hospital. He searched my car, my purse, my pockets, looking for evidence of the secrets he sensed but couldn't prove. One evening, he confronted me in the kitchen. "You've been different lately," he said, leaning against the counter with his arms crossed. "Distant, preoccupied." "I don't know what you mean," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. "You're lying to me." "I'm not lying about anything, Victor." He moved closer, his presence filling the space between us. "I've given you everything. A beautiful home, comfortable life, children who want for nothing, and this is how you repay me, with secrets, with deception." My heart was pounding, but I held his gaze. "I'm not deceiving you." "Then prove it." "How?" He smiled, that cold, calculating smile I had learned to fear. "I've scheduled a couple's retreat for us, next weekend. A cabin in the mountains, just the two of us. Time to reconnect." My blood ran cold. A weekend alone with Victor, far from anyone who could help me. Far from Patricia, from Ruth, from the fragile network of support I had been building. It felt like a trap. "That sounds lovely," I heard myself say. "I'll arrange for Naomi to stay with friends." Victor's smile widened. "See, that wasn't so hard. We're going to work on things, Marlene. We're going to fix whatever's been wrong between us. You'll see." He kissed my forehead, a gesture that might have looked tender to an outsider, but felt like a brand to me. "It's going to be perfect," he murmured, "just like the old days." I called Patricia that night from the library parking lot, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. "He's taking me to a cabin," I said, my voice cracking. "A remote cabin for a weekend. He says it's to reconnect, but I know him. I know what he's doing." "Slow down," Patricia said calmly. "Tell me everything." I recounted the conversation, the look in his eyes, the way he had framed the trip as reconciliation when everything in my body screamed danger. "Do you feel physically unsafe?" Patricia asked. "I don't know, maybe. He's never hit me, but something feels different this time, like he's planning something." Patricia was quiet for a moment. "Trust your instincts, Marlene. You know this man better than anyone. If something feels wrong, it probably is." "What do I do?" "You have a few options. You could refuse to go, but that might escalate things. You could agree to go and use it as an opportunity to gather more evidence. Or you could use this as your exit point, leave before the trip and don't come back." My mind raced through the possibilities. Refusing would enrage him. Going felt dangerous. And leaving. Was I ready to leave? "I don't know if I can do this," I whispered. "I don't know if I'm strong enough." "You are," Patricia said firmly. "You've been surviving him for 18 years. That takes more strength than most people will ever need in their entire lives. But strength isn't just about endurance, Marlene. Sometimes strength means knowing when to stop enduring and start fighting." I closed my eyes, tears streaming down my face. "What if I fail? What if you succeed?" That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to the cabin. I wasn't going to spend another weekend, another day, trapped in Victor's carefully controlled world, waiting for the next punishment, the next manipulation, the next erosion of everything I used to be. I was going to leave. But I wasn't going to run blindly. I was going to plan. I was going to prepare. And when I walked out that door, I was going to take everything I needed to ensure I never had to come back. I pulled out the hidden file I had been building, the photographs, the documents, the evidence of 18 years of financial entanglement. I reviewed it carefully, making sure I hadn't missed anything crucial. Then I did something I had been avoiding for weeks. I called Joan. She answered on the second ring. Marlene, she said, her voice warm with recognition. I've been hoping you would call. I'm leaving, I said. I'm finally leaving. There was a pause, then, tell me everything, I'll help however I can. And for the first time in 18 years, I felt something I had forgotten was possible. I felt ready. The plan came together over the next 5 days. Joan became my anchor, the person I called when the fear threatened to swallow me whole, the voice that reminded me I wasn't crazy, I wasn't weak, I wasn't alone. She had walked this road before me. She knew every pothole, every dead end, every moment when the temptation to turn back would feel overwhelming. The hardest part isn't leaving, she told me during one of our late-night phone calls. The hardest part is believing you deserve to leave, that your safety matters, that your happiness is worth fighting for. I was still struggling with that belief. 18 years of being told I was nothing without Victor had left deep grooves in my psyche. But every day I practiced a new thought. I am worthy of freedom. I am worthy of peace. I am worthy of a life that belongs to me. It didn't feel true yet, but I said it anyway, and slowly, imperceptibly, something began to shift. Patricia arranged for a safe house, a women's shelter 2 hours away where I could stay until I found permanent housing. Ruth helped me open a bank account in my own name, funded by small cash withdrawals I had been making over the past weeks, amounts too small to trigger Victor's attention. I packed a single suitcase and hid it in Naomi's closet, buried beneath old sweaters and forgotten board games. I copied my essential documents, passport, birth certificate, marriage license, and gave the originals to Joan for safekeeping. And I had a conversation with my daughter. It was a Thursday evening. Victor was at a business dinner, which meant I had approximately 3 hours of freedom. Naomi was in her room, headphones on, lost in whatever music helped her escape this house. I knocked on her door. Come in, she called, pulling off her headphones. I sat on the edge of her bed, my heart pounding so loudly I was certain she could hear it. Naomi, I need to talk to you about something important. She sat up straighter, her eyes sharpening with attention. She knew. On some level, she had always known that this moment was coming. I'm listening, she said. I took a deep breath. I'm leaving your father. The words hung in the air between us. Naomi's expression didn't change, no shock, no disbelief, no tears. Just a slow, careful nod. When? She asked. This weekend, before the trip to the cabin. Are you taking me with you? I felt my heart crack open. That's what I wanted to talk to you about, I said, reaching for her hand. You're 17. In a few months, you'll be 18. Legally, it's complicated. If I take you without your father's permission, he could accuse me of kidnapping. He could use it against me in court. He could. Mom, Naomi squeezed my hand, stopping my spiral. I know. You know. I've been researching, for months. I know about custody laws. I know about parental rights. I know what he could do if you take me without proper legal protection. I stared at my daughter, seeing her clearly for the first time in years. She wasn't a child anymore. She was a young woman, sharp, strategic, already thinking 3 steps ahead. I also know, she continued, that if I stay here and cooperate with the legal process, it actually helps your case. If I'm here and I'm safe, he can't claim you endangered me. And once the divorce is filed, once custody is being determined, I can tell the court what I want, where I want to live, what I've witnessed. Tears streamed down my face. You've been planning too, I whispered. Naomi nodded. I've been waiting for you to be ready. We talked for 2 hours that night. I told her everything, about Joan, about Patricia, about the evidence I had gathered and the escape I was planning. Naomi listened with the same sharp attention she had always possessed, asking clarifying questions, pointing out potential problems, offering solutions I hadn't considered. She was remarkable, and I had almost missed it, so lost had I been in my own survival. There's one thing I need you to promise me, I said as our conversation drew to a close. What? If things get dangerous, if your father figures out what's happening and turns on you, I need you to get out. Call Joan. Call Patricia. Call 911. Don't try to protect me. Don't try to manage him. Just get yourself safe. Naomi's jaw tightened. I won't let him hurt you, Mom. I know you want to protect me, but the best thing you can do, the thing that will help me most, is to protect yourself. If I know you're safe, I can face anything. But if something happens to you because of me. I couldn't finish the sentence. Naomi pulled me into a hug, the first real hug we had shared in years. I held her tight, breathing in the scent of her shampoo, feeling the strength in her young arms. I promise, she whispered. I'll be safe, and I'll be here when you come back for me. I'm coming back for you, I said fiercely. As soon as legally possible, I'm coming back. I know, Mom. She pulled away, looking at me with eyes that were older than her years. I know. Friday arrived like a countdown timer. Victor was in high spirits, excited about the cabin trip, making plans for hikes and romantic dinners, acting as if we were newlyweds embarking on a honeymoon. His performance was flawless. If I hadn't known better, I might have believed him. But I did know better. I knew the monster that lived beneath the charming surface. I knew what awaited me in that remote cabin, far from anyone who could hear me scream. I played my part as well. I smiled and nodded and packed a bag for the trip I would never take. I kissed him goodbye when he left for work that morning, knowing it was the last time I would ever kiss him. See you tonight, sweetheart, he said, his hand lingering on my waist. We leave first thing tomorrow. I have a special weekend planned for us. I can't wait, I replied. He smiled, satisfied. He had no idea. The moment his car disappeared down the driveway, I moved. I retrieved my suitcase from Naomi's closet. I gathered the documents I had hidden in various places throughout the house, beneath loose floorboards, inside hollowed-out books, taped behind picture frames. I checked and double-checked my hidden bank account, confirming the modest but crucial balance. Then I wrote a letter. I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I had served countless silent dinners, swallowed countless criticisms, died countless small deaths, and I wrote, Victor, by the time you read this, I will be gone. I'm not writing to explain myself. You wouldn't understand anyway, and I no longer need your understanding. I'm writing to tell you that I know. I know what you are. I know what you did to Joan. I know what you've done to me. And I know that if I stay, you will eventually destroy what's left of me, if not my body, then my spirit, my sanity, my will to live. I won't give you that satisfaction. You'll receive divorce papers soon. I expect you'll fight. You'll threaten. You'll try to destroy me the way you've destroyed everyone who dared to defy you. But I'm not afraid anymore. I have evidence. I have support. And I have something you never expected me to develop, the courage to walk away. Don't contact me, don't look for me, and don't underestimate me. Marlene. I read the letter twice. Then I sealed it in an envelope and left it on his pillow. Let him find it tonight, after I was safely gone. Let him rage into the empty house, scream at the walls, realize that his control had finally, irrevocably, slipped. The thought brought me more satisfaction than I had felt in 18 years. Joan picked me up at 2 p.m., 3 blocks from the house. I walked to the meeting spot slowly, my suitcase rolling behind me, my heart pounding with every step. I kept expecting Victor's car to appear, kept expecting his hand on my shoulder, his voice demanding to know where I was going. But the street remained empty. The afternoon sun shone down warm and indifferent, and when I saw Joan's car waiting at the corner, I felt something break loose in my chest. I was doing it. I was actually doing it. Joan got out and helped me with my suitcase, her eyes wet with tears she didn't try to hide. You made it, she said. I made it, I echoed, not quite believing the words. Let's go. I climbed into the car. Joan pulled away from the curb, and I watched through the window as my old life, my prison, my museum, my cage, grew smaller and smaller in the distance. I didn't look back. The drive to the safe house took 2 hours. Joan and I talked the entire way about logistics, about what came next, about the legal process that would unfold in the coming weeks and months. But we also talked about other things. About Joan's life now, the peace she had found, the small joys that had gradually returned after years of numbness. About my dreams, the ones I had buried so long ago I had almost forgotten they existed. I wanted to be a writer, I admitted, surprised to hear the words coming out of my mouth. Before Victor, before everything, I used to write short stories, poetry. I thought maybe someday I'd write a book. What stopped you? Victor said it was a waste of time. Said I should focus on being a good wife instead of chasing impossible dreams. Joan glanced at me, and you believed him. I believed everything he said. That was the problem. She reached over and squeezed my hand. It's not too late, she said. You have decades ahead of you. Decades to write, to dream, to become whoever you want to be. This isn't an ending, Marlene, it's a beginning. I let the words sink in, turning them over in my mind like smooth stones. A beginning. After 18 years of ending, of diminishing, of disappearing, I was finally at a beginning. The safe house was a modest building in a quiet residential neighborhood. From the outside, it looked like any other house, a neat lawn, a welcoming porch, curtains in the windows. But inside, it was a haven. The staff welcomed me warmly, showing me to a small but comfortable room that would be mine for the next few weeks. There was a bed with clean sheets, a desk by the window, a small closet for my things. Simple, peaceful, safe. Take your time settling in, the counselor told me. When you're ready, we'll talk about next steps, but for tonight, just rest. You've been through a lot. Rest? I couldn't remember the last time anyone had told me to rest. After everyone left, I sat on the edge of my new bed and looked around. The room was nothing like the palatial bedroom I had shared with Victor, no marble, no crystal, no expensive art. But it was mine. For the first time in 18 years, I was in a space that belonged to me. I lay back on the pillow and stared at the ceiling. And then, quietly at first but building to a crescendo, I began to cry. Not tears of sadness, not tears of fear, tears of release, tears of recognition, tears of a woman who had finally stopped running from herself and started running toward something better. I cried until I had nothing left, and then I slept. Deeply, peacefully. For the first time in years, I woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar curtains. For a moment, I didn't know where I was. My body tensed instinctively, bracing for Victor's presence, for his voice demanding to know why I wasn't already up, why breakfast wasn't ready, why I was wasting the morning in bed. Then I remembered. I was free. The realization washed over me like warm water. I lay still, letting it soak into my bones, into the places that had been cold and clenched for so long. I was in a safe house. Victor didn't know where I was. For the first time in 18 years, I had woken up without fear. It felt strange, disorienting, almost wrong, like I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. But the shoe didn't drop. The morning remained quiet. Birds sang outside my window. Somewhere in the house, I could hear the gentle sounds of other women moving about, footsteps, murmured conversations, the clatter of dishes in a kitchen. I got out of bed slowly, my body aching from the tension of the past weeks. I looked at myself in the small mirror above the dresser. The woman who stared back at me looked tired, worn, older than her 42 years. But there was something in her eyes that hadn't been there before. Hope, fragile, uncertain, but unmistakably present. "Good morning," I whispered to my reflection. "You made it." The safe house operated on a gentle rhythm. Breakfast was communal. A dozen women gathered around a long table, sharing food and conversation. Some were talkative, eager to share their stories. Others were quiet, still raw from whatever they had fled. No one pressured anyone to speak. I found myself sitting next to a woman named Delia. She was younger than me, maybe early 30s, with a scar above her eyebrow that she didn't try to hide. Her hands trembled slightly when she reached for her coffee, but her voice was steady. "First day?" she asked. I nodded. "Is it that obvious?" She smiled gently. "You have the look, like you're waiting for the world to collapse." Isn't it going to? Maybe, probably, but that's the thing about this place. When it collapses, you won't be alone. We catch each other here. I looked around the table at the other women. All ages, all backgrounds, all carrying invisible wounds. Some had children with them, small faces that watched everything with wary, too-old eyes. Others, like me, had left their children behind temporarily, trusting the legal system to bring them back. We were all different, but we were all the same. Survivors, refugees from our own lives, women who had finally chosen themselves. "Thank you," I said to Delia. "For talking to me, I didn't know if anyone would." "That's what they want us to believe," she replied, her eyes darkening with memory. "That we're alone, that no one understands, that no one will help us. But it's a lie. It's the biggest lie they tell." She reached over and squeezed my hand. "You're not alone anymore, Marlene. Welcome to the sisterhood of the escaped." The next few days passed in a blur of activity. Patricia filed the divorce papers, officially beginning the legal process that would end my marriage. The documents were served to Victor at his office, a strategic choice designed to embarrass him in front of his colleagues, to establish from the very beginning that I was no longer afraid of his reaction. His response was exactly what I expected. He called my phone 17 times in the first hour, left increasingly unhinged voicemails, first pleading, then demanding, then threatening. He claimed he didn't understand what had happened. He claimed he loved me. He claimed I was making a terrible mistake. Then, when pleading didn't work, he switched tactics. "You think you can just walk away from me?" His voice in the final message was cold, controlled, razor-sharp. "You think you can take what's mine and disappear? I built that life, Marlene. I built you. Without me, you're nothing. You'll come crawling back. They always do." I listened to each message once, documented them for Patricia, and then deleted them. He was wrong. I wasn't going to crawl back, and I was done being nothing. The legal battle unfolded over the following months. Victor hired an army of expensive lawyers who filed motion after motion, trying to delay proceedings, drain my resources, exhaust my will to fight. He contested the divorce on every possible ground. He disputed the financial evidence I had gathered. He accused me of abandonment, of mental instability, of being an unfit mother. He requested full custody of Naomi. That was his cruelest move, using my daughter as a weapon, threatening to take her from me permanently if I didn't back down. His lawyers argued that I had left the family home without warning, that I had proven myself to be unstable and unreliable, that Victor was the more suitable parent. I felt the old fear rising, the voice in my head that whispered, "Maybe you made a mistake, maybe you should have stayed, maybe you've destroyed everything." But then I remembered Naomi's words, her promise, her strength. And I remembered Joan, who had survived this same war and emerged victorious. "He's trying to scare you," Patricia told me during one of our strategy sessions. "That's all he knows how to do, but fear isn't evidence, and we have evidence." We did have evidence, mountains of it, financial records proving Victor's control over every aspect of our lives, text messages documenting his monitoring and manipulation, testimony from Joan about his pattern of behavior across multiple relationships, and most powerful of all, Naomi's own statement, a written account of everything she had witnessed, everything she had felt, everything she wanted the court to know. My 17-year-old daughter had given a voice to our shared suffering, and her words were devastating. The custody hearing took place on a cold Tuesday in November. I hadn't seen Victor in months. He had been barred from contacting me directly, forced to communicate only through lawyers. But that morning, in the courtroom, I saw him for the first time since I had left. He looked immaculate, as always. Expensive suit, perfect hair, confident smile. He greeted his lawyers with handshakes and nods, the picture of a successful businessman temporarily inconvenienced by a troublesome wife. But when his eyes met mine across the room, I saw something I had never seen before. Fear. He was afraid. Afraid of what I knew. Afraid of what I had documented. Afraid that his carefully constructed image was about to crumble. Good. The hearing lasted 3 days. Witnesses testified. Documents were entered into evidence. Lawyers made arguments and objections and closing statements. Through it all, I sat with my head held high, refusing to look away, refusing to shrink. On the final day, Naomi testified. She walked to the witness stand with the same quiet strength I had seen in her bedroom the night I told her I was leaving. She looked at the judge, not at her father, and she spoke clearly. "My father controlled everything," she said. "What my mother wore, who she talked to, where she went. He monitored her phone. He checked the mileage on her car. He made her ask permission to spend money she had earned." Victor's lawyer tried to object, but the judge overruled. "He never hit her," Naomi continued. "But he didn't have to. He broke her down piece by piece, year after year, until there was almost nothing left. I watched my mother disappear. I watched her become a ghost in her own house. And I swore that when she was finally ready to leave, I would help her." She looked directly at her father for the first time. "You're not a good man, Dad. You're not even a good pretender anymore. And I don't want to live with you. I want to live with Mom. I want to help her remember who she used to be." Victor's face went pale. His lawyers whispered frantically. The judge's expression remained unreadable. When Naomi stepped down from the witness stand, she walked past me and squeezed my shoulder. "I told you," she whispered. "I've been waiting." The judge's ruling came 2 weeks later. Full custody to me, supervised visitation for Victor, a financial settlement that gave me half of everything he had accumulated during our marriage, the house, the investments, a significant portion of the business. And most importantly, freedom. Legal, documented, irrevocable freedom. I stood in Patricia's office, holding the court papers in my trembling hands, reading the words over and over again. "It's done," Patricia said, smiling. "You won." Won, such a simple word for such a complicated victory. I hadn't just won a court case. I had won back my life. I called Joan that afternoon. "I heard," she said before I could speak. "Patricia told me. How do you feel?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Happy, terrified, free, all of it at once." "That's normal. It takes time to process, to believe it's really over." "Is it ever really over?" Joan was quiet for a moment. "The marriage is over. The legal battle is over. But healing is a different journey. It doesn't follow court timelines or settlement agreements. It happens on its own schedule in its own way." "How long did it take you?" "I'm still working on it," she said honestly. 23 years later and I'm still healing. But here's what I've learned. Healing isn't about reaching a destination. It's about moving forward, one step at a time, one day at a time. And you've already taken the hardest step. "What's that?" "You chose yourself. Everything else flows from that." Naomi moved in with me a week later. I had rented a small apartment in a quiet neighborhood, nothing like the mansion I had left behind, but infinitely more precious. 2 bedrooms, a modest kitchen, a balcony where I could sit in the morning and watch the sun rise. The day Naomi arrived, she walked through each room slowly, taking it all in. Then she turned to me with a smile that lit up her entire face. "It's perfect," she said. "It's small. It's ours." She was right. It was ours, not Victor's, not a museum of his success, just a small, imperfect, beautiful space where we could begin again. That night, we ordered pizza and sat on the living room floor, surrounded by unpacked boxes. We talked about everything, her plans for college, my dreams of writing again, the future that stretched before us like a blank page waiting to be filled. "Mom," Naomi said at one point, her voice serious, "I want you to know something." "What, sweetheart?" "I'm proud of you, for leaving, for fighting, for not giving up. I know it was the hardest thing you've ever done. And I know you did it partly for me, but I need you to understand you also did it for yourself. And that's not selfish. That's survival." I felt tears welling up in my eyes. "When did you become so wise?" "I had a good teacher," she said, even when she didn't know she was teaching. 1 year later, I stood on the balcony of my apartment, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. It had become my morning ritual, this quiet moment before the world woke up, when the air was still fresh and the possibilities felt endless. I would hold my coffee cup between my palms, feeling its warmth seep into my skin, and I would breathe. Just breathe. For 18 years, I had forgotten how to do that simple thing. Breathing had become shallow, careful, rationed, like everything else in my life with Victor. I had learned to take up as little space as possible, to need as little as possible, to be as invisible as possible. But now I breathed deeply, fully, without apology. The year since my escape had been the hardest and most beautiful of my life. There were days when the weight of everything I had survived threatened to crush me. Days when I woke up in a panic, certain that Victor was standing over my bed. Days when the old voices in my head, his voice, really, internalized over 2 decades, told me I was worthless, foolish, doomed to fail. But there were also days of unexpected joy. Days when I laughed without looking over my shoulder. Days when I made a decision, what to eat, where to go, what to wear, and realized no one was going to criticize or correct me. Days when I looked at my daughter and saw her flourishing, unburdened, finally free to become whoever she wanted to be. Naomi had started college in the fall. She was studying psychology, fitting, given everything she had witnessed and survived. She called me every few days, not out of obligation, but out of genuine connection. We had become friends, equals, partners in healing. "I'm writing a paper about coercive control," she told me during one of our calls. "About how psychological abuse leaves invisible scars that take years to heal. About how survivors often don't recognize what's happening to them until it's almost too late." "Sounds heavy," I said. "It is, but it's also important. I want people to understand. I want other kids who grew up like I did to know they're not alone, that what they're feeling is real, that escape is possible." My daughter, the advocate, the warrior, the voice for the voiceless. I had never been prouder of anyone in my life. Derek came home for Thanksgiving that year. It was the first time we had all been together since the divorce, Derek, Naomi, and me, in my small apartment, cooking a modest meal that would have horrified Victor's sensibilities. No catering, no crystal, no performance of perfection. Just family, real family. Derek had been slower to process everything than his sister. He was 21 now, a young man still grappling with the reality of who his father truly was. For years, he had idolized Victor, sought his approval, modeled himself after his success, believed the narrative of the powerful patriarch and the difficult wife. The divorce had shattered that narrative, and Derek was still picking up the pieces. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said that Thanksgiving evening, after Naomi had gone to bed and we were sitting alone in the living room. "Sorry for what?" "For not seeing it sooner, for not protecting you, for believing him when he said you were the problem." I reached over and took my son's hand. He was so much bigger than me now, tall and broad-shouldered like his father, but with eyes that held a gentleness Victor had never possessed. "You were a child," I said. "Children aren't supposed to protect their parents. That's not your job. It was never your job." But I should have seen. "Derek," I squeezed his hand firmly. "Listen to me. Your father is very, very good at what he does. He fooled me for 18 years. He fooled everyone, his business partners, his friends, the entire community. You were raised inside his illusion. How could you have seen through it when even I couldn't?" Tears slipped down his cheeks. My son, my firstborn, crying in my living room over wounds neither of us had chosen. "I see it now," he whispered. "I see everything, the way he talked to you, the way he controlled you, the way he made you small so he could feel big. I see it and I hate him for it." "Don't hate him," I said softly. "Hate takes too much energy. It keeps you tied to him. Just learn from him, learn what not to become, and then become something better." Derek nodded slowly, wiping his eyes. "I'm going to try," he said. "I'm really going to try." "I know you will. You already are." In January, I started writing again. It began small, just a journal, really, a place to pour out the thoughts and memories that still haunted me. Patricia had suggested it as part of my healing process. a way to externalize the trauma instead of letting it fester inside. But the journal quickly became something more. I found myself writing stories. Not my own story, not yet, but stories about women like me. Women who had been trapped in invisible prisons. Women who had lost themselves in someone else's control. Women who had found the courage to escape, to heal, to begin again. The words flowed out of me like water from a broken dam. All those years of silence, of swallowed thoughts, of forbidden expression, they had created a reservoir that now demanded release. I wrote in the mornings before work. I wrote in the evenings after dinner. I wrote on weekends, losing track of time as the pages accumulated. By spring, I had a manuscript, 243 pages of hope and heartbreak, of suffering and survival. It wasn't perfect, I knew that, but it was real. It was honest. It was mine. I showed it to Joan first. We met at her house, a cozy cottage surrounded by flowers that she tended with the same care she had once used to tend her own healing. She read the entire manuscript in one sitting, tears streaming down her face, while I sat in her kitchen pretending not to watch. When she finished, she looked up at me with something like wonder. "Marlene," she said, "this is important. This needs to be published." "I don't know, it's too personal, too raw. What if it helps someone? What if a woman reads this book and recognizes herself? What if it gives her the courage to leave, to call a lawyer, to choose herself?" She set the manuscript down carefully, reverently. "That's what art is supposed to do. It's supposed to connect us, to show us we're not alone. This book," she touched the pages gently, "this book could save lives." The book was published in October, 2 years after my escape. I had found a small press that specialized in memoirs and true stories. The editor was a woman named Grace who understood immediately what I was trying to do, what I was trying to say. She helped me shape the manuscript into something tighter, clearer, more powerful, without losing the raw honesty that was its heart. The cover was simple, a closed door with light streaming through the cracks. The title was even simpler, Invisible Chains. I did a small book launch at a local bookstore. I expected maybe 20 people, a few friends, some supportive neighbors, perhaps a curious stranger or two. But when I arrived, the room was packed. Women of all ages had come. Some I recognized from the safe house. Others were strangers who had seen the announcement online. All of them held copies of my book, waiting for me to sign them. I stood at the podium, looking out at their faces, and I felt something I couldn't name. Not pride exactly, though there was some of that. Not gratitude, though there was plenty of that too. It was more like recognition, connection, a sense of being part of something larger than myself. "I didn't write this book because I'm special," I told them. "I wrote it because I'm ordinary, because millions of women experience what I experienced, because most of them suffer in silence, believing they're alone, believing they're crazy, believing they deserve what's being done to them." I paused, steadying my voice. "I wrote this book to tell them the truth. They're not alone, they're not crazy, and they don't deserve any of it. None of us do." A woman in the front row was crying. An older woman near the back nodded slowly, knowingly. "Escape is possible," I continued. "Healing is possible. A new life is possible. But it starts with one moment, one choice, one confession of truth that sets everything else in motion." I looked down at the podium, remembering that rainy night 2 years ago. The wrong car, the strange woman, the words that had poured out of me unbidden. Sometimes that moment happens by accident. Sometimes it happens because we can't hold the silence anymore. Sometimes it happens in the most unexpected place, with the most unexpected person. I smiled softly. For me, it happened in the back of a stranger's car, in the middle of a rainstorm, when I thought I was alone, and discovered I never had been. After the launch, a woman approached me. She was young, maybe late 20s, with dark circles under her eyes and a nervous energy that I recognized instantly. "Mrs. Ellison," she said quietly, clutching my book to her chest, "I need to tell you something." "Please, call me Marlene." She nodded, swallowing hard. Marlene, I'm in a situation like the one you described in your book. My husband, he doesn't hit me, but he controls everything. My phone, my money, my friends. My family doesn't believe me because he's so charming in public. Everyone thinks I'm lucky to have him. Her voice broke. I don't feel lucky. I feel trapped. I feel like I'm disappearing. I took her hands in mine, feeling them tremble. What's your name? Sarah. Sarah. I looked into her eyes, seeing myself reflected there, the woman I had been, the woman she still was. I want you to listen to me very carefully. You're not crazy. You're not imagining things. What you're experiencing is real and it's abuse, and you deserve better. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I don't know how to leave. I don't know where to go. I don't know if I'm strong enough. I reached into my purse and pulled out a business card. The same card Joan had given me, now with my own number added beneath Patricia's. You're stronger than you know, I said. And when you're ready, not before, but when you're ready, call this number. There are people who will help you, people who understand, people who have walked this road before. She took the card with shaking hands. How do I know when I'm ready? I smiled gently. You'll know, trust yourself. That voice inside you that says something is wrong, that voice is telling the truth. Listen to her. She's trying to save your life. I'm 50 now. 8 years have passed since that rainy night when I climbed into a stranger's car and accidentally confessed my way to freedom. 8 years of healing, growing, becoming someone I never knew I could be. The apartment is long gone. I own a house now, small, nothing fancy, but entirely mine. I bought it with my share of the divorce settlement and the modest royalties from my book, which has gone on to sell far more copies than I ever expected. It has been translated into 7 languages. It has been adapted into a documentary. It has reached women on every continent, in every situation, carrying the same message I whispered to Sarah that night at the book launch. You are not alone. Joan lives just 20 minutes away. We have Sunday dinners together, trading stories and laughter, marveling at the strange path that brought us together. She is 73 now, still sharp, still fierce, still the woman who chose to wait in her car outside a restaurant in case someone needed her. You saved my life, I tell her sometimes. No, she always replies. You saved your own life, I just opened the door. Naomi is a therapist now, specializing in trauma recovery for women and children. She has published papers, given lectures, built a career around helping others escape the prisons she once witnessed. When she talks about her work, her eyes light up with purpose. She is exactly who she was always meant to be. Derek is engaged to a wonderful woman named Priya. He called me before he proposed, asking for my blessing, and I wept with joy at the man he has become. Gentle, kind, attentive, everything his father never was. How do I make sure I don't become like him? He asked me once. The fact that you're asking that question, I told him, means you already haven't. And Victor? Victor remarried within a year of our divorce, a younger woman, beautiful and bright, who I'm sure he is slowly destroying the same way he destroyed Joan, destroyed me. I tried to warn her once early on. She didn't believe me. They never do, not at first. But I've learned that some battles aren't mine to fight. I can only open doors. I can't force anyone to walk through them. Sometimes people ask me, if you could go back to that night, the night you got into the wrong car, would you do it again? And I always give the same answer. Yes, 1,000 times yes. Not because the journey was easy. It wasn't. The divorce nearly broke me. The custody battle nearly destroyed me. The years of therapy, of rebuilding, of learning to trust myself again, they were the hardest work I've ever done. But that night, in the back of Joan's car, I did something I hadn't done in 18 years. I told the truth. I spoke my pain out loud, to a stranger, without knowing who she was or where she would take me. I confessed the secrets I had buried so deep I had almost forgotten they existed. And in doing so, I cracked open the prison I had built around my own heart. That confession changed everything. It gave me Joan, who became my guide. It gave me Patricia, who became my protector. It gave me the courage to leave, the strength to fight, the faith to believe that a different life was possible. It gave me back myself. If you're listening to this story, I want you to know something. Maybe you're in a situation like mine. Maybe you're being controlled, diminished, slowly erased by someone who claims to love you. Maybe you've been told that you're crazy, that you're lucky, that you should be grateful for what you have. Maybe you've been silent for so long that you've forgotten you have a voice. But you do have a voice. You've always had one. And when you're ready, when the weight of silence becomes heavier than the fear of speaking, that voice will find its way out. Maybe it will happen in a therapist's office. Maybe it will happen with a trusted friend. Maybe it will happen in the back of a stranger's car, in the middle of a rainstorm, when you think no one is listening. But someone is always listening, and someone is always waiting to help. You are not alone. You are not crazy. You are not trapped. There is a door, and it opens from the inside. So I ask you now, as I close this chapter of my story, what truth are you carrying that needs to be spoken? What confession is waiting on the tip of your tongue? And what might change if you finally let it out? Tell me in the comments below. I read everyone. And I promise you, whatever you're facing, whatever you're hiding, whatever you're afraid to say, there is someone out there who understands. There is someone who has walked your road. There is someone who is waiting, right now, to open the door. All you have to do is speak. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched your heart, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you or someone you know is in a controlling or abusive relationship, please reach out. Help exists, hope exists, and a new life is possible. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other. With love, Marlene.